Hey everyone, it's Dale. It was great meeting everyone today, and I want to talk about AP style. Um, if you bought the AP style book, which there's a brand new picture of the latest edition that just came out a week ago. If you got the 2014 edition, that's okay. I don't think they've made any big changes since that one. Um, you notice it's quite thick. There are a ton of rules in there. That does not mean you are expected to memorize every single rule. I've been doing AP style for about 20 years now, and I still routinely check the style book for things. Um, you are encouraged and expected to use the style book as much as humanly possible. If you ever even have to stop and think for 1 second, how do I write that? Go ahead and look it up in the AP style book. It's worth it. And the reason why we do this is because we want a uniformity when it comes to how we write across newspapers, across platforms, and journalism as a whole has selected AP as our style that we use. And so that's why if you read an article in USA Today, it's going to look or feel very similar to if you read that same article or you read a different article in the Austin American Statesman, at least in the style of writing. Some newspapers have their own style books. The New York Times, for instance, has its own style book. So you will notice differences and they stick out like a sore thumb. Once you get used to this, you will begin to spot, oh man, they're not using AP style. So I want to dig into a few of the most common things that you're going to be using AP style for. This, again, is not an exhaustive list. These are just a few of the issues you're going to be coming up against over and over and over again this semester. So let's go ahead and take a look at them. The first one is abbreviations, which is a big one to tackle because there are a ton of rules for these. Again, not expecting you to memorize these rules. That's what the book is there for, to look them up when you need to. General rule with abbreviations is you will spell out names of organizations, firms, agencies, universities, colleges, groups, clubs, any organization, governmental body, things like that, the first time it is mentioned in your story. Then you will abbreviate on second reference. So if you have the Civil Aeronautics Board, second reference, you can just say the board. Or the San Marcos Independent School District, second reference, you can use SMISD or the school district. Another example there, National Organization for Women, first reference, you will spell it out. Second reference, you can use the abbreviation. General rule across the board. For most two-letter abbreviations, or for all two-letter abbreviations, you will use periods. I'm sorry, wait, that is most two-letter abbreviations. You will use periods in between. So if you write US in your story, excuse me, it will be U.S. For three-letter abbreviations like FBI, CIA, ABC, NBC, CBS, stuff like that, no periods, just the three letters. Why? I honestly cannot tell you. That's just AP style. It's just one of those rules that you get used to after a while. After you look it up enough, you will begin to know two-letter abbreviations, periods in between the letters. Three-letter abbreviations, no periods. Streets or addresses, another big one with abbreviations. You'll notice I have street, avenue, and boulevard there. Those are the only three street names. So in other words, road, alley, circle, drive, parkway. You do not abbreviate those under any circumstances. But street, avenue, and boulevard under AP style, if you have the numeric address in front of it, you abbreviate street, avenue, and boulevard. Those are the only three. So if it's 1234 Goober Street, it would be 1234 Goober St. dot. Same thing with avenue and boulevard there. If you do not have the numeric address, so you're just saying the Walmart on Crabtree Boulevard, you would spell out Boulevard because you're not saying the Walmart at 4333 Crabtree Boulevard. So hopefully that makes sense. Street, avenue, and boulevard, the only three roadway titles that you will abbreviate, and you only do so when you have the numeric address going in front of the street name. In terms of state names, we used to have all these crazy rules you had to look up, and every time you would write a state in a story, AP got rid of all that last year. So the big change in the 2014 style book is that states are no longer abbreviated across the board. We used to use, anyways, it was a mess. So this makes it a lot easier now. Just if you have a state name, just write it out. One thing to keep in mind, if you have an old AP style book, so if you bought a used one from 2013 or older, it's going to have a long list of abbreviations for states. This is up to you to remember that we no longer abbreviate states in our stories. We also have a lot of titles before names, and this is one of the more confusing parts of AP style. You are going to come across titles every single story, mostly having to do with politics or positions of power, police officer titles, firefighter titles, stuff like that. As a general rule, you will abbreviate and capitalize titles before names. So if it's Governor Abbott, or Governor Greg Abbott, if that's the first reference, GOV would be capitalized and abbreviated. If you just said the governor, you would spell out governor. But if it comes before his name, you use it in an abbreviation, capitalized and abbreviated. So in that sentence there, you can see I have two titles that I have abbreviated because I have both names. Governor Abbott, GOV. Abbott, said he did not yell at Lieutenant Governor Dan Patrick. Again, if it just said the governor said he did not yell at the lieutenant governor, you would spell everything out. The one title you never abbreviate is president. So President Obama, it's not PRES dot Obama, it's President Obama. Goes for before or after the name. Okay? Okay, when it comes to capitalization, there's going to be times where you want to include a piece of art or a TV show, a speech, a song, a movie, stuff like that. General AP style rule is you capitalize and place quotes around the names of books, plays, poems, songs, lectures, speech titles, hymns, movies, TV programs. Anytime you use the full name of one of those, you're going to go ahead and put quotes around it. So if you're talking about The Simpsons, quote marks around The Simpsons. Star Wars, Star Spangled Banner, stuff like that. So, again, books, plays, poems, songs, lectures or speech titles, hymns, movies, TV programs. Use the full name, put it around, or put quote marks around it. And then when it comes to newspapers and magazines, we capitalize the names, but we do not use quote marks. Again, why? I don't know. It's just AP style. It's one of those things. You have to also be careful with words like the and magazine, especially if you're dealing with titles of magazines. So, for instance, Washington Post, the official title of the newspaper is Washington Post. It's not the Washington Post. Now, if you have to use the in a sentence, so he gave an article or he gave an interview to the Washington Post, the in that sense would not be capitalized. However, with New York Times, the is actually part of the official name of the New York Times. So every time you reference New York Times, it needs the in front of it because that is the official name of the newspaper. Same thing with USA Today. It's not the USA Today, so the would be lowercase if you ever use it in that situation. And then let's look at magazines. So I have an issue of Time Magazine here, but the official name of Time is just Time. It's not Time Magazine, capital M. So if you ever have to make reference to the magazine itself, M is lowercase. Hopefully that makes sense. If it's not clear, go ahead and go to magazines or newspapers and look up those rules and read them over. For numbers, this one tricks up a lot of people. So this is a good one to just go ahead and try to memorize because you're going to be using this a lot. For numbers, we spell out both cardinal and ordinary numbers from 1 through 9. So we use ONE, 2WO, THREE, and so on, 1 through 9. Then we use the numeric figure for 10 and above. So 1 through 9, we go ahead and spell it out. numeric figures for 10 and above. So you see plenty of examples there. We use commas in our numbers with 4 or more digits except for years. So you wouldn't use 2015. You wouldn't put 2, 015 for the year. That's just 2015. Same thing with addresses. So again, you see some examples there. If you have 4 or more numbers in a number, you go ahead and put the comma in, except for years and street addresses. Okay, another really important thing is we do not use signs or symbols for any of these. The following that you see up on the screen: cents, degrees, inches, feet, number, and percent. So if you look at the examples there, 5 feet 2 inches, you wouldn't write 5 with the one single quote mark and then 2 and the double quote mark. You would actually write that out. You also notice that whenever you're dealing with height or percentages or degrees, you always use the numbers, even though I just told you 1 through 9 is always spelled out, except for when you're dealing with certain situations. So looking up numerals in the AP style book is a section that you're going to be going to over and over and over again this semester. The only sign we use is the actual dollar sign. So if you need to write out $50 or $200, whatever it is, you would actually use the dollar sign in that situation. All right, so we talked a little bit about abbreviating titles. Again, just a quick reminder, we capitalize and abbreviate those titles when used before a name. So Governor Greg Abbott, it would be Gov. Greg Abbott. Remember, President is the only one we never abbreviate. But if that title comes after the name, you would spell it out and it's lowercase. So this, again, is just one of those rules you need to just learn. You're going to be using this over and over again. It might actually help you, because if you get confused of which ones to do, you always spell out titles and lowercase them if it goes after the name. So that's one easy way I always differentiate it. So if I write Greg Abbott, comma, Governor of Texas, Governor is lowercase and not lowercase and spelled out when it comes after his name. You also lowercase and spell out titles when they stand alone. So if you're not using the full name, you just lowercase, just write out the word. The president, instead of President Obama issued a statement, if you just say the president issued a statement, president is lowercase and spelled out. For time of date, we have one very specific way to do time or date. You use lowercase a, period, lowercase m, period, or lowercase p, period, lowercase m, period. And there is a space between the numeral and then the abbreviation there. Again, I just told you to, general rule, spell out 1 through 9. You use numerals with time. So this is another one to just go ahead and look up and get familiar with. So if you look there, I've got it correct, 3 p.m. We don't do 3:00 p.m. or you don't do 3 with the P and the M without dots and right up against it. There's one way to do it. 3 space P dot M dot or 12 space A dot M dot. Just get used to that. Time is one of those ones that's pretty easy and you see it incorrect all the time. One other really important thing to consider when we're using a day of the week. So let's say this is the assignment for Wednesday. If I'm using Thursday in a story, I wouldn't say tomorrow. I actually say Thursday in a print story. If you stop and think about it for a second, that makes sense because we don't know when people are actually going to be reading that story. People read print stories at all times. It might end up in a magazine. It might end up on the web where you never know what day they're going to actually read it. So we use Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday instead of today, tomorrow, yesterday, stuff like that, last night. So always get used to Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday for any print story. Again, I don't expect you to understand all these things right away. I know it's a lot. If you're looking like any of the people or things in this picture, that's fairly common for AP style. The first time you see it, it's a little bit unusual, but I promise you, you will get used to it really quickly. Again, good rule of thumb, if you even have to stop and pause and think for half a second, how do I write that? Go ahead and look it up in the AP style book. I guarantee you there's either a rule in there or there's one that's very close that will guide you to the answer.